It is also my great pleasure, on behalf of my nation, to offer a most heartfelt welcome to the 16 new members of the United Nations. Now, today, I address the leaders of nations and the builders of nations. But, indirectly, I speak also to those you represent, to those who have sent you here, to those who have entrusted their future to your hands. I greatly desire that my words shall strike an echo also in those hearts, in the deep heart of humanity, in that great heart from which has been brought so many shouts of joy, so many cries of sorrow and despair, and so much love and laughter. Today it is President Sukarno who addresses you. But more than that, though, it is a man, Sukarno, an Indonesian, a husband, a father, a member of the human family. I speak to you on behalf of my people, those 92 million people of a distant and wide archipelago, those 92 million people who have lived a life of struggle and sacrifice, those 92 million people who have built a state upon the ruins of an empire. They and the people of Asia and Africa, of the American continent and the European continent and the people of the Australian continent, they are watching and listening and hoping. They see in this organization of the United Nations a hope for the future and a prospect of the present. The decision to attend this session of the General Assembly was not an easy one for me to take. My own nation faces many problems, and time to solve those problems is always short. However, this is perhaps the most important assembly yet held, and all of us have a responsibility to the rest of the world as well as to our own nations. None of us can escape this responsibility, and surely none wish to. I am very sure that the leaders of the younger and the reborn nations can make a very positive contribution to the solution of the many problems facing this organization and the world at large. Indeed, I am confident that man may once again say, the new world is called to redress the balance of the old. It is clear today that all major problems of our world are interconnected. Colonialism is connected to security. Security is connected to the question of peace and disarmament. Disarmament is connected to the peaceful progress of the underdeveloped countries. Yes, all are connected and interconnected. If we succeed in finally solving one problem, then the way to the solution of all the others will be open. If we succeed in solving, for example, the problem of disarmament, then the necessary funds will be available to assist those nations which so urgently need assistance. 5 years ago, 29 nations of Asia and Africa sent their representatives to the Indonesian city of Bandung. 29 nations of Asia and Africa. Today, how many free peoples are there? I will not count them, but look around this chamber now. Then tell me whether I am right or not when I say that this is the time of the building of nations and the time of the emergence of nations. Yesterday, Asia, and that is a process not yet completed. Today, Africa, and that too is a process not yet completed. For 15 years now, the West has known peace, or at least the absence of war. Of course, there have been tensions. Yes, there has been danger. But the fact remains that in the midst of a revolution engulfing 3/4 of the world, the West has been at peace. Both great blocs, in fact, have successfully practiced coexistence for all those years.
The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Mr. Suharto, President of the Republic of Indonesia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
In the name of
Tuan
God
Presiden,
Almighty, Mr.
Tuan
President,
Sekretaris Jenderal,
Mr.
merupakan
Secretary
satu
General,
kehormatan bagi saya
I
untuk
deem it
turut
a
serta
distinct privilege for
atas
me
nama
to
pemerintah dan
participate
rakyat
on behalf
Indonesia
of the government
dalam
and people of
peringatan
Indonesia
yang
in this
50 tahun
historic
berdirinya.
commemoration of the 50th
Ulang tahun
anniversary
ke-50
of the United
punya
Nations.
arti yang penting
The
bagi
50th
kami.
anniversary of the United Nations
Tahun ini pun
is
kami
particularly
merayakan hari
significant
ulang tahun
to us
ke-50
in Indonesia.
proklamasi kemerdekaan.
For this year, we are also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the proclamation of our independence. It is not a coincidence that both the Charter of the United Nations and the Constitution of Indonesia embrace the same principles and objectives, both yearning for the universal peace that will come only when all humankind share the fruits of freedom and justice. For Indonesia, the United Nations is an important forum for the fulfillment of our constitutional mandate to contribute to the eradication of colonialism, domination, poverty, and injustice everywhere, and to the shaping of a new international order. The United Nations has figured prominently in Indonesia's struggle to preserve its freedom. Mr. President, the United Nations has played a crucial role in containing conflicts in various regions. To ensure peace in this post-Cold War era, however, we need to enhance the capabilities of the United Nations through a more effective global and regional mechanisms for peacemaking, peacekeeping, and post-conflict peace building, as well as preventive diplomacy.
Upaya pencegahan konflik melalui diplomasi. Secara keseluruhan PBB
On the whole, the
dan badan-badan
United
berikutnya
Nations and
telah
its
melakukan
specialized agencies
sejumlah
have pursued
kegiatan
an
yang
immense
menyeluruh
array of
seluruh
activities
segi kehidupan
that touch
masyarakat
every
di seluruh
aspect
dunia.
of people's
Namun
lives
semuanya
all
tadi
over the
tidak
world.
dapat terus
It cannot,
dilanjutkan,
however,
sementara PBB
continue to
menghadapi
carry them
krisis
out
keuangan
with
yang
undiminished success and
Jika
vigor
keadaan ini
while
dibiarkan
it totters in the brink
maka
of
akan
financial
merugikan
insolvency.
masyarakat dunia.
This situation cannot
Marilah
go indefinitely
kita jadikan
without
peringatan
adverse
50 tahun
consequences to the
organisasi
world
kita ini
community.
sebagai
Let this
momentum
50th
yang baik
anniversary
bagi
of
kita
our
semua
organization
untuk
be an occasion
membahas
for all of
masalah
us
penting itu,
to address this
serta
critical
masalah
issue,
yang
as well as the
berkaitan
issues
dengan
relating to its
reformasi,
reform,
dan
revitalization,
demokratisasi
and democratization, so that we'll
Tuan
be
Presiden,
able to adopt
sejak
the
tahun
challenges of
60-an
our
PBB
time.
telah
Mr.
melancarkan
President, since the
serangkaian
1960s, the United
pembangunan
Nations has
internasional.
launched
Namun
a series
hal
of
itu
international
tidak
development
cukup
strategies,
untuk
but these
memperbaiki
have not been sufficient to redress the imbalances
antara negara-negara
between the
maju dan
developed
berkembang.
and the developing
Kesenjangan
countries.
ternyata
The gap
berlanjut
between
makin
them
lebar.
continues to
Negara-negara
widen.
berkembang tetap
The developing countries
tersisihkan
remain
dari
marginalized
pengambilan
from
keputusan
the world
dunia.
economic
Dengan
decision-making
berakhirnya perang
processes.
dingin muncul
With the end of the
gelombang
Cold
saling
War,
ketergantungan dan
there has been a new
multilateralisme.
surge of interdependence and
Ekonomi dunia telah
multilateralism,
semakin global.
while the
Gerakan
world
non-blok
economy
melakukan
has
upaya
increasingly
baru guna
globalized.
membentuk tata ekonomi dunia
The
yang
non-aligned
lebih adil.
movements at its
Itulah
Jakarta
sebabnya
Summit in
ATT Gerakan
1992
Non-Blok
adopted
di
a new
Jakarta
approach
tahun
and orientation
1992
and launched
telah
an
menetapkan
initiative
pendekatan
to once
dan
again
orientasi
engage the
baru.
developed countries in a
Kami
dialogue
juga
based on this
mengambil
time
prakarsa untuk
on mutual
sekali lagi
interests and
melibatkan
benefits,
negara-negara maju
equitably share
dalam dialog
responsibility,
yang kali ini didasarkan
as
pada
well
asas
as on
kepentingan dan
genuine
manfaat bersama,
interdependence.
pembagian tanggung jawab yang adil dan saling ketergantungan yang sejati. Adalah harapan kami bahwa
It is our hope that
dihidupkannya
the
kembali
revival
dialog
of this
ini akan
dialogue
tercermin
will be
secara
distinctly
nyata dalam
reflected
agenda
in the
untuk
agenda for
pembangunan
development,
sehingga dapat
so that
melengkapi
it
agenda
will
untuk
adequately
perdamaian.
complement the agenda
Tuan
for
Presiden,
peace.
di
Mr.
tengah masa
President,
sulit sekarang ini,
in these troubled
kita
times, we,
para
the
pemerintah dan
governments and
seluruh
peoples of
rakyat
the world,
dunia berpaling pada
look up
PBB
to the
demi
United
kelanjutan
Nations for the
harapan-harapan
sustenance
kita.
of our hopes.
Pernyataan bahwa kita
There is no
membutuhkan
question
PBB
that we need
bukanlah
the
suatu
United
yang perlu
Nations.
dipertanyakan. Hal yang justru sering
What
kita
we often
lupakan
forget
adalah
is
bahwa
that the
PBB
United
juga
Nations
membutuhkan kita.
needs us too.
Keberhasilan PBB kita sambut
We
dengan
applaud its
sukacita,
triumphs,
tetapi
but we
kita
often forget
seringkali lupa bahwa
that its
kegagalan-kegagalan dalam dunia
are
ini adalah
ours
juga
too.
kegagalan kita. Tanggung jawab
Its
PBB adalah juga
responsibility
tanggung jawab
is
kita
our
semuanya.
responsibility.
PBB telah berhasil
The United
memenuhi
Nations has
kebutuhan
served
kita
us well
selama setengah
over the
abad
past
terakhir
half
ini.
century.
Tetapi kita tidak akan
However,
pernah mampu
we will never be able
menciptakan
to
tatanan
realize
internasional
the new
baru
international
yang lebih
order
damai,
of greater
lebih
peace,
berkeadilan
social
dan
justice,
lebih
and
makmur.
common prosperity,
Apabila organisasi
so long
ini
as
dibiarkan
the
tetap pada
organization is
kondisi
allowed
seperti
to
sekarang.
remain in the state
Kita hanya
that it
dapat
is in
mencapai
today.
tujuan itu
We can reach
apabila
that goal
kita
only
pada
after we
akhirnya
have finally
mampu
made the United
menjadikan
Nations
PBB
the
sebagai
effective
sarana
instrument
perdamaian
of
yang
peace
efektif
as
bagaimana
was
dicita-citakan
envisioned
50
50
tahun
years
yang lalu.
ago.
Semoga Tuhan
May
Yang
God
Maha Esa
Almighty
memberkati
bless
kita
us all.
semua. Terima kasih.
Thank you, and I
Wassalamualaikum
thank you, Mr.
warahmatullahi
President.
wabarakatuh.
I thank the President of the Republic of Indonesia for his statement.
En nombre de la Asamblea General tengo el honor de dar la bienvenida a las Naciones Unidas al excelentísimo señor Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, presidente de la República de Indonesia, y lo invito a dirigir la palabra a la Asamblea.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon us all. Madam President, I am honored to represent my country, Indonesia, at this year's UN General Assembly debate to discuss how we can find better ways to peacefully resolve or manage conflict around the world. This, of course, is what the UN is all about, to end the scourge of war and to create a peaceful and equitable world order based on international cooperation. And in these decades since its founding, the UN has developed a number of instruments to address conflicts in all their manifestations. In those decades, many interstate and intrastate conflicts have been resolved. Angola, Bosnia, Cambodia, Timor-Leste, and many more. The question we must ask now is whether these instruments are adequate to address the whole spectrum of conflicts that the world community now faces. This is clearly evident in the Syrian crisis. The world community is painfully witnessing the worsening violence and unfolding humanitarian catastrophe on the ground. At the same time, the UN is in paralysis in responding to the situation. There is no end to the conflicts in sight, and it appears that we have not seen the worst of the crisis. Indonesia therefore reiterates its call for the immediate cessation of violence in Syria, which has taken a high toll on innocent civilian lives. The UN Security Council must now unite and act decisively as mandated by the UN Charter to bring the situation under control. Clearly, whatever the explanation, the present international system for now cannot resolve the Syrian conflict. And there is every likelihood that the community of nations will see similar conflicts in the future. It will be a different corner of the world and in different forms with different actors. It will not help the cause of international peace if, again, we end up being divided and unable to positively alter the cause of the conflict. The world community must evolve ways to address them more effectively toward peaceful ends. We must adapt the 21st century security challenges. There is no question that the world we live in today is in much better condition than the one in the 20th century. Freedom has spread, the threat of nuclear holocaust is receding significantly, there is no prospect of a world war, the kind of which twice wrecked the 20th century. The global economy has expanded remarkably. Nations are becoming more interdependent. International cooperation and partnerships are flourishing. However, it is only relative peace, not total peace as yet. We have moved from the era of the Cold War to an era of warm peace. In this warm peace, the world remains stuck with an outdated international security architecture that still reflects 20th century circumstances, in contrast with the global economic architecture that has done much better to adjust to the 21st century. In this warm peace, the relationship between the major powers, for the first time, are marked by relative stability and increased cooperation. But the question remains unanswered as to how they will accommodate the growing ranks of emerging powers that are reshaping the world order. In this warm peace, old enmities and long-standing conflicts can still resurface in the new strategic landscape, even carried on by new generation. In this warm peace, we are seeing new security challenges and opportunities arising from seismic power shifts that are occurring in some regions. The security implications of the political events in the Middle East are still unfolding. In this warm peace, the world community still has to contend with an array of unfinished business: the Arab-Israeli conflict, nuclear disarmament, territorial dispute in the South China Sea, tension in the Korean Peninsula, and the likes. In this warm peace, new progress can easily regress. Hard-won peace process can stall or even crumble. Strategic miscalculation in disputed theater may lead to rising tension and armed clashes. And in this warm peace, pockets of hatred and bigotry, intolerance and extremism continue to litter our world. Perhaps we will have to live with this warm peace for decades, but I do believe that we can lower the temperature of this warm peace. Where possible, we can resolve the conflict one by one. We can strengthen the building blocks for peace. We can promote a new globalism that can potentially change the dynamic of conflict resolution. In order to do this, we need to try new approaches and be more imaginative. The first thing we have to do is to evolve a new strategic mindset. Let's face it, the remnant of Cold War mentality still persists in parts of the geopolitical landscape, not least our own United Nations, where rigid, dogmatic, zero-sum calculation sometimes still come into play. For long-term peace, a peace born of trust and mutual confidence, we must get rid of that mindset. In this light, we must continue to work toward a reformed UN Security Council, a council that reflects 21st century strategic reality and provides security to all. we must also work to perfect the instruments of peace, which is robust regionalism.
Today, still, a catastrophic situation in Gaza is unfolding before our eyes. At this very moment, the innocent are crying for help, are crying to be saved. Who will save them? Who will save the innocent? Who will save the old and women? Millions are facing danger at this very moment. As we sit here, they are facing trauma. They are facing irreparable damage to their bodies. They are dying of starvation. Can we remain silent? Will there be no answer to their screams? Will we teach them that the human family can rise to the challenge? Madam President, we must act now. Many speakers have said that. We must stand for a multilateral order where peace, prosperity, and progress are not the privilege of a few, but the right of all. With a strong United Nations, we can build a world where the weak do not suffer what they must, but live the justice that they deserve. Let us continue humanity's great journey of ideals, the selfless aspirations that created the United Nations. Let us use science to uplift, not use science to destroy. Let rising nations help others to lift themselves. I am convinced that the leaders of the great world civilizations of the West, of the East, of the North, of the South, leaders of America, Europe, of India, China, the Islamic world, the whole world, I am convinced they will rise to their role demanded by history. We are all hopeful that the leaders of the world will show great statesmanship, great wisdom, restraint, humility, overcome hate, overcome suspicion. Madam President, distinguished delegates, we are greatly heartened by the events of the last few days, where significant leading countries of the world have chosen to side with history, to choose the right side of history, the path of the moral high ground, the path of rectitude, the path of justice, the path of humanity, to shun hatred, to overcome suspicion, and to avoid the use of violence. The use of violence will beget violence. No one country can bully the whole community of the human family. We may be weak individually, but the sense of oppression, the sense of injustice has proven in the history of mankind that this sense of injustice, this sense of oppression will unite into a strong force that will overcome this oppression, that will overcome this injustice. To close, I would like to reiterate again Indonesia's complete support for the two-state solution in Palestine. We must have an independent Palestine, but we must also recognize, we must also respect, and we must also guarantee the safety and security of Israel. Only then we can have real peace. real peace, and no longer hate and no longer suspicion. The only solution is this two-state solution. Two descendants of Abraham must live in reconciliation, peace, and harmony. Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, all religions, we must live as one human family. Indonesia is committed to being part of making this vision a reality. Is this a dream? Maybe, but this is the beautiful dream that we must work together towards. Let us work towards this noble goal. Let us continue humanity's journey of hope, a journey started by our forefathers, a journey that we must complete. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Namo Buddhaya. Thank you very much. May God bless us all. May peace be upon us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of